Commander Jake Morrison stood at the observation window of Sentinel-7, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The blue planet looked peaceful from orbit, almost fragile. He had been stationed on the defense platform for 6 months now, and the routine had become comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. "Commander, we have something strange on the sensors," Lieutenant Amy Wells called from her station. Her voice carried an edge that made Jake turn away from the window. "What kind of strange?" Jake walked across the command deck, his magnetic boots clicking softly against the metal floor. Amy's fingers danced across her console, pulling up readings that made no sense. Multiple contacts just appeared at the edge of the solar system. They weren't there a second ago, and now there are dozens of them, big ones. Chief Engineer Carl Bennett looked up from his maintenance logs. "That's impossible. Nothing that size can just appear out of nowhere." But the sensors didn't lie. Jake watched as more contacts bloomed on the display like deadly flowers. 17, 23, 35. They kept coming. Each one was massive, larger than any ship humanity had ever built, and they were moving fast, accelerating toward the inner solar system at speeds that should have been impossible. "Get me Mars Colony on the line," Jake ordered, "and wake up Earth Defense Command. Tell them we have uninvited guests." The response from Mars came quickly. Colony Director Frank Peterson sounded annoyed at being disturbed during the middle of his night cycle. "Morrison, this better be important." "Do you know what time it is down here?" "Sir, we have multiple unknown contacts heading your way. I'm sending you the data now." There was a pause as Peterson reviewed the information. When he spoke again, the annoyance was gone, replaced by something that sounded like fear. "That can't be right. These readings suggest ships larger than our biggest carriers." "Sir, I recommend you start evacuation procedures immediately." Peterson laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "Evacuate 30,000 people? On what authority? These could be automated probes or even a sensor glitch. I'm not causing a panic over—" The transmission cut off. Jake stared at the screen, watching as Mars Colony's signal simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone like someone had flipped a switch. "Amy, what happened?" Jake demanded. Her face had gone pale. "Commander, Mars is gone. The entire colony just disappeared from sensors, and those unknown contacts are still coming." Carl stood up from his station, his hands shaking. 30,000 people don't just disappear. "This is an attack. This is actually an attack." Jake's training kicked in, pushing away the shock and horror. "Battle stations. Get everyone suited up. Amy, send out an emergency broadcast to all Earth forces. Carl, I want all weapons online now." The next few hours became a nightmare painted in fire and death. The alien ship swept through the solar system like a scythe through wheat. Earth's defense fleet, scattered across orbital positions and lunar bases, tried to mount a resistance. It was like throwing rocks at a hurricane. Captain Lisa Grant commanded the cruiser Valiant, one of Earth's newest and most powerful warships. Jake watched her final transmission from Sentinel-7, unable to help, unable to do anything but witness. Lisa's face was calm despite the chaos visible behind her on the bridge. "They're too strong," she reported. "Our weapons barely scratch their shields. We've lost the Magnificent, the Zeus, and the Shanghai in the last 10 minutes. I'm ordering the civilian transports to scatter. Maybe some of them can—" An explosion rocked the Valiant. Through the video feed, Jake could see fire spreading across the bridge. Lisa gripped her command chair, her uniform torn and bloodied. "Tell Earth," she said, her voice growing faint. "Tell them these things don't negotiate. They came here to destroy us. Tell them to fight. Tell them." The transmission ended in static. Jake felt something break inside his chest. A cold fury beginning to build beneath the shock and fear. The aliens didn't bother with warnings or demands. They simply attacked. Orbital defense platforms exploded one by one. Ships that tried to flee were hunted down and destroyed. The lunar bases went dark as enemy fire turned the surface into molten glass. "Commander, they're launching dropships toward Earth," Amy reported. "Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands." Through the observation window, Jake could see the fireflies of atmospheric entry. The aliens were landing on Earth itself. And then the bombardment began. The first strike hit Tokyo. From orbit, it looked like a small sun had briefly ignited on Earth's surface. The city of 13 million people simply ceased to exist, replaced by a crater that glowed white-hot. London followed minutes later, then Mumbai, São Paulo, and Moscow. Surgical strikes designed to break humanity's will. "Get everyone to the escape pods," Jake ordered. His voice sounded strange in his own ears, distant and cold. We can't fight from here. We need to get to Earth. What about Helen? Amy asked quietly. She knew Jake's wife was in New York, attending a medical conference. Jake's hands clenched into fists. She's smart. She'll find shelter. She'll survive. She has to. The evacuation of Sentinel-7 was chaos. People running through corridors, alarms blaring. The station shaking as alien ships passed overhead. Jake made sure every crew member got to a pod before he climbed into his own. Carl and Amy joined him, and they launched just as the station exploded behind them. The pod's heat shield glowed red as they plunged through the atmosphere. Through the small window, Jake could see New York in the distance. Parts of the city were burning. Then he saw the flash as an alien weapon struck near Central Park, and his heart stopped. Helen, he whispered. The pod crashed into a lake in upstate New York. They swam to shore, dragging emergency supplies from the sinking wreckage. Around them, the world had become unrecognizable. The sky was dark with smoke. In the distance, massive alien ships hung in the air like dark gods. They found a radio in an abandoned gas station. Jake turned it on, desperate for any news. The emergency broadcast system was active, but the voice coming through was halting, uncertain. This is President Daniel Carter speaking from a secure location. America has been attacked. The world has been attacked. The enemy has demonstrated overwhelming force, but we will not surrender. We cannot surrender. To all citizens, to all soldiers, to anyone who can hear this message, find shelter, find weapons, and prepare to fight. We will show these invaders what humanity is made of. Jake looked at Amy and Carl. Both of them were dirty, exhausted, and terrified. But in their eyes, he saw the same thing that was growing in his own heart. Not just fear, but anger. Pure burning rage. We need to move, Jake said. We need to find the nearest military installation and regroup. What about Helen? Amy asked. I'll find her, Jake promised. But first we help organize the defense. These aliens think they've already won. They think we'll just roll over and die. They're wrong. They started walking south, following the smoke trails and distant sounds of explosions. Around them, other survivors emerged from hiding. Some were crying, some were in shock, but others had that same look in their eyes. That same cold fury. An old man stood on the porch of his farmhouse holding a hunting rifle. He watched the alien ships in the distance and spat on the ground. Come on then, he muttered. Let's see how tough you are. A woman helped her children into a storm cellar, then picked up a baseball bat. Stay down here, she told them firmly. Mommy's got work to do. A teenager spray-painted words on a broken wall. They started it. We'll finish it. The aliens had made a critical mistake. They had studied humanity's technology and found it primitive. They had analyzed Earth's divided nations and assumed weakness. They had calculated their victory with cold mathematical precision, but they hadn't understood what they were truly facing. They had poked a sleeping bear. They had threatened the one species in the galaxy that became more dangerous when cornered. They had attacked humanity's home, killed humanity's children, and expected submission. Instead, they got something that would haunt their species for generations to come. They got humanity's anger. And nothing in the galaxy was more terrifying than an angry human who had nothing left to lose. 3 weeks after the invasion began, Lieutenant Colonel Nick Davis crouched in the rubble of what used to be downtown Chicago. The city was a graveyard of broken buildings and burning vehicles. Somewhere in the smoke above, alien patrol ships hummed with that distinctive sound that made his teeth hurt. They're changing shifts in 10 minutes, whispered Sergeant Maria Lopez beside him. She was checking her watch, a battered mechanical thing that still worked when all the fancy electronics had been fried by alien weapons. That's our window, Nick nodded. His squad had learned the hard way that the aliens followed patterns. They were organized, efficient, and deadly, but they were also predictable. Every 6 hours, the patrol ships rotated. For exactly 7 minutes, there was a gap in their coverage. 7 minutes to move, to strike, to survive. Corporal Jason Hunt crawled up beside them, his face streaked with dirt and blood. I count 15 of those big alien soldiers guarding the supply depot. The ones with the energy shields. Krell troops, Maria said. She had spent the last 2 weeks studying every piece of alien equipment they could salvage. That's what the radio called them. 8 feet tall, armored like tanks and mean as hell. Can we take 15 of them? Jason asked. Nick considered the question. His squad was down to 12 people. They had limited ammunition, no heavy weapons, and were running on maybe 3 hours of sleep in the last 2 days. The odds were terrible, but the alien supply depot had food, medical supplies, and most importantly, weapons that actually worked against their shields. "We don't have a choice," Nick said finally. "If we don't get supplies, we're dead in a week anyway. At least this way we go down fighting." The plan was simple because complicated plans got people killed. They would wait for the patrol gap, move fast through the subway tunnels, and hit the depot from 3 sides at once. Grab everything they could carry and disappear before reinforcements arrived. It almost worked. They made it through the tunnels without being spotted. They reached their positions as the patrol ships moved away. Maria's homemade explosives took out the depot's rear wall perfectly. The Krell soldiers turned to face the explosion, and that's when Nick's team hit them from the sides. The Krell were tough. Nick emptied half a magazine into one alien's chest and it barely staggered. But Maria had figured out their weakness. The energy shields were powerful, but they couldn't maintain full strength while the Krell moved quickly. A running Krell had weak shields, and a Krell with weak shields could be killed. "Keep them moving," Nick shouted. "Don't let them plant their feet." The battle was brutal and fast. Jason went down when a Krell weapon scorched his left arm. 2 more squad members were injured. But in the end, humanity's oldest weapon proved its worth: rage. The soldiers fought with a fury the Krell hadn't expected. They fought for their dead cities, their murdered families, their burning world. When the last Krell fell, Nick's team had less than 3 minutes before reinforcements would arrive. They grabbed everything they could carry: alien weapons, power cells, medical kits, and food rations that looked like purple paste, but would keep them alive. They were halfway back to the tunnels when Jason stopped suddenly. "Wait, look at this." He was holding a small alien device no bigger than a cell phone. Its screen was displaying symbols that shifted and changed. "Leave it," Nick ordered. "We don't have time." "It's a communicator," Jason insisted. "I've seen the aliens using these. If we can figure out how it works." An alien patrol ship screamed overhead. Nick grabbed Jason's collar and dragged him toward the tunnel entrance. "Move now, analyze later." They made it back to their hideout in an old subway station. The space was crowded with survivors, maybe 200 people hiding in the darkness. Families, soldiers, office workers who had never fired a gun in their lives, all of them looking to Nick and his team for hope. An older woman named Betty, who had been a nurse before the invasion, treated their wounds with supplies that were running dangerously low. "That's the 3rd raid this week," she said quietly. "How long can we keep this up?" Nick didn't have an answer for her, but across the world, others were asking the same question and finding the same answer: as long as it takes. In Beijing, Commander Wei Chen was leading his own resistance from the subway systems. The vast underground network had become a fortress. Wei Chen's people had turned maintenance tunnels into supply lines and abandoned stations into hospitals. They struck at night, hitting alien patrols and vanishing before the Krell could respond. Wei Chen had been a military strategist before the invasion. Now he was a ghost haunting the aliens' nightmares. His latest attack had collapsed an entire alien command center, burying 1,700 Krell under tons of concrete and steel. The aliens were scared of the tunnels now. They were learning that humanity fought differently on its home ground. In the Amazon rainforest, Captain Pedro Santos was proving that low technology could beat high technology with the right tactics. His fighters used bows and arrows tipped with alien power cells. They set traps in the jungle canopy. They moved through terrain where the Krell's heavy armor was a liability, not an advantage. Pedro's people had grown up in the forest. They knew every tree, every stream, every hidden path. The aliens stumbled through the jungle like drunk elephants, and Pedro's fighters struck them down one by one. At night, the aliens could hear drums in the darkness. Human drums, promising death to the invaders. In Australia, Air Force pilot Lieutenant Kate Murphy was commanding the last squadron of working aircraft on the continent. They flew low under the alien radar, using canyons and valleys for cover. They struck fast at alien supply lines and disappeared before the patrol ships could catch them. Kate had lost her entire family in the Sydney bombardment. She flew every mission like it was her last, taking risks that made her wingmen nervous. But she always brought them home. And every alien ship she destroyed was revenge for her dead daughter, her dead husband, her dead parents. Meanwhile, in a hidden facility deep beneath the Colorado mountains, Dr. Susan Miller was fighting a different kind of war. She stood in front of a crashed alien scout ship, studying its shattered hull with tired but determined eyes. "Tell me you found something," said Dr. Alan Price, joining her with 2 cups of terrible coffee. It was made from recycled grounds, but it was hot and caffeinated, which was all that mattered anymore. I found something, Susan confirmed. Look at this power system. It uses exotic matter in ways we didn't think were possible. But there's a problem. When we hit it with certain electromagnetic frequencies, the whole system becomes unstable. That's a weakness, Alan said, excitement creeping into his voice. That's a weapon, Susan corrected. If we can build a device that generates the right frequency, we could shut down their shields, maybe even their ships. How long? Weeks, maybe months. I need more samples, more data, more time. Time is something we don't have much of, General Paul Henderson said, entering the lab. He looked older than his 60 years, worn down by the weight of commanding Earth's scattered military forces. The aliens are tightening their grip. They control every major city. They're herding survivors into camps, and their warships are still in orbit, ready to burn anything that looks like organized resistance. Then we better work faster, Susan said simply. Jake Morrison had his own problems. He had finally reached the refugee column in Tennessee, following reports of a large group moving through the Appalachian Mountains. His heart nearly stopped when he saw Helen in the crowd, dirty and exhausted but alive. They held each other for a long moment, not speaking, just grateful to be alive. I knew you'd find me, Helen said finally, pulling back to look at him. I never doubted it for a second. I would have searched the entire planet, Jake replied. A tall man with a weathered face approached them. You must be the commander Helen kept talking about. I'm Danny Shaw. Used to be a park ranger before all this started. Now I guess I'm whatever we need me to be. Danny had been leading the refugee column through backwoods trails and hidden valleys, keeping them one step ahead of alien patrols. He knew the mountains like old friends, and that knowledge had kept hundreds of people alive. We've been collecting supplies and weapons, Danny explained, showing Jake their stockpile. Nothing fancy, mostly hunting rifles and camping gear. But we're learning. We're adapting. Jake looked at the refugees. Families with children, elderly people, wounded soldiers. All of them still alive despite the odds. All of them still fighting in their own way. We need to establish a permanent base, Jake said. Somewhere defensible. These mountains could work. We could coordinate with other resistance cells, become a logistics hub. There's an old mining complex about 20 miles from here, Danny suggested. Built into the mountain itself. Lots of rooms, natural protection, water source nearby. Helen joined them, her medical knowledge already proving invaluable. I've been treating wounds with whatever I can find. But we're running out of antibiotics, painkillers, everything. People are dying from infections that would have been simple to treat before the invasion. We'll get you what you need, Jake promised, one way or another. That night, sitting around a small fire, Nick Davis's squad in Chicago, Wei Chen's fighters in Beijing, Pedro Santos's warriors in the Amazon, Kate. 3 months into the occupation, the tide was beginning to turn. Not quickly, not dramatically, but in small victories that added up to something bigger, something the aliens hadn't planned for. Nick Davis stood in the Chicago underground examining the alien weapons his team had collected over the past month. They had dozens now, stolen from dead Krell soldiers and raided supply depots. But using them had been impossible. The weapons were designed for alien hands keyed to alien biology. Until now. It works, Maria Lopez said, holding up a modified alien rifle. Her hands were shaking with excitement. Dr. Miller's instructions came through the radio network last night. If we rewire the power cell and bypass the genetic scanner, humans can fire them. Jason Hunt took the weapon, aimed at a target they had set up in the tunnel, and pulled the trigger. A bolt of blue energy screamed across the space and vaporized the target completely. The entire squad stared in stunned silence. We can fight back, Jason whispered. We can actually fight back. Nick felt something shift in his chest. For 3 months they had been fighting with weapons that barely scratched alien shields. Now they had weapons that could punch through Krell armor like it was paper. The playing field had just leveled. Get these instructions to every resistance cell in the city, Nick ordered. Tonight we stop running. Tonight we take the fight to them. Across the Pacific Ocean, Commander Wei Chen was preparing for his own attack. His intelligence network had located a major alien command center in the ruins of Shanghai. It was heavily defended, surrounded by Krell troops and protected by patrol ships. Attacking it would be suicide. Wei Chen smiled. He had been planning this particular suicide for 2 weeks. His engineers had been studying the alien buildings, learning how they were constructed. The aliens built strong, but they built fast. They used prefabricated materials held together by energy bonds. Very powerful energy bonds, but Wei Chen had learned something important. Powerful things often had powerful reactions when they failed. "We only get one shot at this," he told his assembled fighters. 200 men and women, all volunteers, all ready to die if necessary. The explosives will destroy the power generators in the basement. When those generators fail, the energy bonds holding the building together will collapse. The entire structure will come down. "What about the Krell inside?" someone asked. 1,700 of them, Wei Chen confirmed. 1,700 aliens who will never threaten another human city. The attack began at midnight. Wei Chen's fighters hit the command center from 4 directions at once, drawing the defenders away from the basement. The Krell were strong, but they were also arrogant. They thought the humans were trying another futile assault. They were wrong. The explosives detonated exactly on schedule. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the building began to groan, a deep sound that Wei Chen felt in his bones. The Krell soldiers realized what was happening and tried to evacuate, but it was too late. The command center collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris. Wei Chen and his fighters watched from a safe distance as the massive structure folded in on itself, burying the aliens beneath tons of wreckage. "For Earth," Wei Chen said quietly. His fighters echoed the words, "For Earth." The news of the Shanghai victory spread through the resistance networks like wildfire. If a command center could fall, then nothing the aliens built was truly safe. Other cells began planning similar attacks. In Colorado, Dr. Susan Miller was working on an even bigger problem. The alien ships in orbit were the real threat. Ground forces could be fought, supply depots could be raided, buildings could be destroyed. But the warships hanging above Earth could destroy entire continents with a single strike. "I found something in the communication logs," Alan Price said, rushing into the lab with a tablet. "The aliens use a centralized AI to coordinate their fleet. They call it the Nexus Mind. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon is connected to it." Susan studied the data. "That's a massive weakness. If we could disrupt the Nexus, we could blind their entire fleet. Or better," Alan suggested, "if we could infect it with a virus, something that spreads through their network like a disease. We could shut down their shields, disable their weapons, maybe even crash their ships. Writing a virus for alien technology seems impossible. 6 months ago, surviving an alien invasion seemed impossible. Now look at us." Susan allowed herself a small smile. "We'll need to get close to one of their capital ships. Close enough to physically interface with their systems. That means getting past their shields, their defenses, their entire security system. So we need a strike team, soldiers willing to go on a suicide mission into the heart of an alien warship." "When you put it that way, it sounds crazy." "It is crazy," Alan agreed. "But crazy is all we have left." General Henderson approved the mission immediately. He didn't have to ask for volunteers. When the word went out, dozens of soldiers stepped forward. Every single one of them had lost someone in the invasion. Every single one of them was ready to trade their life for a chance to hurt the aliens. Nick Davis was chosen to lead the strike team. He picked Maria Lopez and Jason Hunt to join him, along with a veteran pilot named Lieutenant Steve Wallace, who had somehow kept a captured alien shuttle flying for the past month. "This is it," Nick told his team as they prepared. "This is our chance to end this war, or at least give humanity a fighting chance. The virus is ready. We just need to get it uploaded to the Nexus." "And then what?" Jason asked. "Then we get out if we can, and if we can't, we make sure we take as many aliens with us as possible." While the strike team prepared, Jake Morrison was dealing with his own challenges in Tennessee. The refugee base in the Cumberland Mountains had grown to over 1,000 people. They had shelter, water, and enough food to last a few more weeks. But they were running out of medicine, ammunition, and hope. "We need to make contact with other bases," Helen argued during their daily planning meeting. "We can't survive in isolation. We need to coordinate, share resources, work together." Danny Shaw nodded in agreement. "I've been hearing radio chatter about a big operation being planned. Something that could change everything, but nobody will tell us the details." "That's because it's dangerous," Jake said. He had been in contact with General Henderson through encrypted channels. He knew about the strike team mission. If the operation fails, it could trigger the aliens to wipe out every human settlement they can find. "If it succeeds, we need to be ready to fight." "Ready how?" Helen asked, ready to hit them with everything we have the moment their defenses drop. Every resistance cell, every hidden base, every survivor with a weapon. We hit them all at once everywhere before they can recover. The plan was ambitious, insane even. But then again, so was surviving the first 3 months of an alien invasion. Kate Murphy received the same message in Australia. Her squadron had grown to 15 aircraft, cobbled together from salvaged parts and running on fuel they distilled themselves. It wasn't much, but it was enough to hurt the aliens when the moment came. "We're going after their orbital command station," she told her pilots. "When the signal comes, we fly straight up and don't stop until either we're dead or it is." "Those are terrible odds," one pilot observed. Kate smiled grimly. "We're not here for good odds. We're here for revenge." Pedro Santos in the Amazon received similar instructions. His fighters would hit every alien outpost in the rainforest simultaneously. Commander Wei Chen in Beijing would lead attacks across China. Every resistance cell on every continent was being mobilized for one coordinated strike. Operation Fury, they called it. One last desperate gamble. Nick Davis and his strike team infiltrated the alien capital ship on a cool October night. The ship had landed near the ruins of Los Angeles for repairs, its shields lowered to allow maintenance crews access. That was their window. Steve Wallace piloted their captured shuttle with skill that bordered on art, weaving through alien patrol routes and security checkpoints. They landed in a maintenance bay without triggering any alarms. "So far so good," Maria whispered as they moved through the ship's corridors. "It's never this easy," Nick replied. He was right. They made it halfway to the ship's central core before alarms started blaring. Krell soldiers poured into the corridors, their weapons blazing. The team fought back with stolen alien rifles, but they were outnumbered and running out of time. Jason Hunt held a choke point while the others advanced, his alien weapon cutting down Krell soldiers with ruthless efficiency. "Go!" he shouted. "I'll hold them here." "Jason, no!" Maria screamed, but Jason was already sealing the bulkhead door behind them. Through the small window, Nick could see him standing alone against a wave of Krell soldiers. Jason looked back, smiled, and gave them a thumbs up. Then he turned back to the fight. The last thing Nick saw was Jason charging forward, weapon firing, buying them precious seconds with his life. They reached the core with Steve Wallace badly wounded and half their team dead. Maria's hands flew over the alien controls, following Dr. Miller's instructions precisely. The virus uploaded slowly, agonizingly slowly, while Krell soldiers cut through the doors behind them. "Done," Maria shouted. "The virus is in." "Then let's get out of here," Nick said, helping Steve to his feet. They ran through smoke-filled corridors as the virus began spreading. The sky over Chicago lit up with explosions as Nick Davis led the assault on the alien occupation zone. His squad, now equipped with modified alien weapons, poured into the streets alongside hundreds of other fighters who had been hiding in the tunnels for months. The Krell soldiers tried to form defensive lines, but their shields were flickering on and off randomly, thanks to Susan Miller's virus. Without their technological advantage, they were just targets. "Big, confused targets, push forward," Nick shouted, firing his alien rifle at a group of Krell trying to regroup. The blue energy bolts cut through their armor like it was made of cardboard. Don't give them time to think. Maria Lopez was beside him, throwing modified explosives that used alien power cells. Each explosion took out multiple Krell soldiers and sent others scrambling for cover that no longer protected them. The aliens were learning what it felt like to be the hunted instead of the hunters. Across the city, similar scenes played out. Resistance fighters emerged from every shadow, every hiding place, every dark corner where they had been planning their revenge for 3 long months. Buildings that had been alien strongholds became death traps as humans swarmed through them with a fury the Krell had never imagined possible. In Beijing, Commander Wei Chen led a synchronized attack on every alien position in the city. His fighters moved through the subway tunnels like water, flooding into alien-controlled zones from underground. The Krell had never learned to defend against attacks from below. Now they were paying for that mistake. "The occupation headquarters is falling back," one of Wei Chen's lieutenants reported. "They're trying to evacuate to their ships." "Don't let them," Wei Chen ordered. "Every alien that escapes is one we'll have to fight again later. End them here. End them now." His fighters needed no further encouragement. 3 months of anger, grief, and hatred poured out in a wave of violence that left the alien headquarters a smoking ruin. In the Amazon, Pedro Santos and his warriors moved through the jungle like ghosts, hitting alien outposts that had thought themselves safe. The Krell couldn't call for help because their communications were down. They couldn't retreat because they didn't know which direction was safe. All they could do was die. Pedro stood over the body of a Krell commander and thought about his village, burned by alien weapons on the first day of the invasion. He thought about his sister, his nephew, his friends, all dead because these aliens had decided Earth was theirs for the taking. "This is for everyone we lost," he said quietly, before moving on to the next target. In Australia, Kate Murphy led her squadron of 15 aircraft straight up into the sky, heading for the Alien Orbital Command Station. The massive structure hung above Earth like a sword, but its shields were down and its weapons were offline. "This is for my family," Kate whispered as she locked her targeting system onto the station's main reactor. "This is for everyone who died looking up at your ships and feeling helpless. Now you're the helpless ones." Her missiles launched in perfect synchronization with her wingmen. The command station tried to activate its defenses, but the virus had corrupted every system. The missiles struck home, and the station began to tear itself apart from internal explosions. Kate pulled her aircraft into a tight turn, watching the station burn. Her radio crackled with cheers from the other pilots, but she felt no joy. Only grim satisfaction. One enemy position destroyed, thousands more to go. Jake Morrison watched the battle unfold from the Tennessee base, coordinating with General Henderson through encrypted channels. The world map on his screen was lit up with red dots marking combat zones. Everywhere humans and aliens were fighting, and for the first time, humans were winning. "We're getting reports from all over," Helen said, reading incoming messages. "Los Angeles has been liberated. Paris is pushing the aliens back. Tokyo's resistance just captured an alien general. The momentum is with us, but it won't last forever," Danny Shaw warned. "The virus is working now, but the aliens will adapt. They'll find ways to purge it from their systems. We need to press the advantage while we have it." "Already happening," Jake confirmed. "General Henderson is ordering all forces to focus on the alien warships. If we can destroy their fleet, they can't reinforce their ground troops." Nuclear missiles that had been carefully hidden and preserved for this exact moment launched from silos across the globe. Without shields, the alien carriers were vulnerable. The first missile struck a carrier above Europe, and the resulting explosion lit up the night sky like a second sun. The ship broke apart and fell from orbit, burning as it descended, but the aliens weren't finished. War Master Thelnax, commander of the invasion fleet, watched his forces crumble from his flagship above the Pacific Ocean. He had never experienced defeat before. The Vakari Collective had conquered 17 star systems with minimal resistance. Earth was supposed to be another easy victory. Instead, it had become a nightmare. "How many ships have we lost?" Thelnax demanded. His subordinate checked the displays, his hands shaking. 37 carriers destroyed. 52 cruisers disabled. Ground forces are being overrun across every continent. The Nexus Mind is corrupted beyond repair. We're losing coordination with all units. Thelnax slammed his fist against his command chair. These humans had done the impossible. They had survived the initial assault, adapted to alien technology, and turned the invasion into a meat grinder. Worse, they had done it with primitive weapons and pure stubborn rage. "We still have one option," Thelnax said coldly. "Activate the planet destroyer." His subordinate stared at him in shock. "Sir, that weapon is forbidden by collective law. It will shatter the planet's crust and make the entire world uninhabitable. We won't be able to harvest any resources." "I don't care about resources anymore," Thelnax snarled. "If we can't have this planet, then nobody will. Activate the weapon." General Henderson received the warning from Susan Miller's monitoring systems 15 minutes later. The alien flagship was charging some kind of massive weapon, something they had never used before. Her calculations suggested it could destroy the entire planet. "How long do we have?" Henderson asked, his voice steady despite the cold fear in his gut. "Maybe an hour," Susan replied. "The weapon needs time to charge, but once it fires, we're done. Everything we fought for, everyone who's died, it will all be for nothing." Henderson looked at the map of Earth, seeing all the red dots where humans were fighting for their world. All those people, all that courage, all that fury. He couldn't let it end like this. "Get me every pilot we have left," Henderson ordered. "Every ship that can fly, every weapon that can fire. We're going after that flagship." The call went out across all resistance channels. Every pilot who could still fly, every soldier who could still fight, All of them received the same message. The aliens were trying to destroy Earth itself. If the flagship wasn't stopped, everyone would die. Jake Morrison climbed into a captured alien fighter that Steve Wallace had managed to repair. Helen tried to stop him, but he kissed her gently and shook his head. "I have to do this," he said. "If I don't, there won't be a world for us to rebuild." "Then I'm coming with you," Helen insisted, climbing into the gunner's seat. "If we die together." Nick Davis and Maria Lopez took another captured fighter, their damaged shuttle from the strike mission long abandoned. Kate Murphy rallied her squadron. Pilots from every nation, flying whatever aircraft they could find, all converged on the same target. The alien flagship hung above the Pacific Ocean like a dark god, its planet destroyer weapon glowing with building energy. The human fleet was pathetic in comparison. Maybe 50 aircraft total, half of them barely functional, all of them outgunned. But they came anyway. The flagship's defensive weapons came online despite the virus, spraying the sky with fire. Human ships exploded left and right. A young pilot named Bobby screamed as his aircraft disintegrated around him. An older woman named Patricia rammed her plane into an alien gun emplacement, taking it out at the cost of her life. Kate Murphy's voice cut through the chaos on the radio. "The weapon's charging mechanism is exposed on the underside of the ship. That's our target. We need to hit it before the weapon fires." "I'll never make it through that defensive fire," someone said. "Then we clear a path," Kate replied. "Everyone with missiles target the gun emplacements. Everyone else follow me in." The human ships divided into two groups. The first group launched every missile they had, overwhelming the flagship's defenses. Explosions rippled across the alien ship's hull. In that moment of chaos, Kate led the second group straight toward the charging weapon. Alien fire caught her wings, shredding them like paper. Her aircraft began to spin out of control. Through her canopy, she could see the glowing weapon mechanism getting closer and closer. She thought about her daughter, about her husband, about everyone she had lost. "For Earth," she whispered, and rammed her aircraft directly into the charging mechanism. The explosion was massive. The weapon's charging sequence went critical, triggering a chain reaction that tore through the flagship's internal systems. But it wasn't enough. The ship was still functional, still capable of destroying the planet. Jake Morrison and Helen flew through the explosion's debris field. They could see the weapon trying to recharge, its glow building again. They had one chance. 5 years after the invasion ended, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Defiance and watched Earth rotate slowly below. The planet still carried scars from the war. Craters where cities used to be. Barren zones where alien weapons had poisoned the soil. Monuments rising from battlefields where millions had died. But Earth was healing. The cities were being rebuilt. The poisoned zones were being cleaned. And the monuments ensured that nobody would ever forget what had happened or what humanity had learned about itself. "Still looks beautiful from up here," Helen said, joining him at the observation window. She wore the uniform of Earth's new diplomatic corps, her rank insignia showing her position as the Defiance's chief diplomatic officer. "Beautiful and dangerous," Jake replied with a small smile, "just like the species that lives on it." The past 5 years had transformed humanity in ways the aliens never anticipated. The Vakari Collective had retreated to their own territory after the failed invasion, too shocked and frightened to attempt another attack. But humanity hadn't been content to simply rebuild what was lost. General Henderson, now leading the Earth Defense Coalition, had made sure of that. Using captured alien technology and the brilliant minds of scientists like Susan Miller and Alan Price, humanity had built its own interstellar fleet. The ships combined human engineering with alien advances, creating vessels that were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything either species could build alone. The Defiance was the flagship of that new fleet, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons and protected by shields that could withstand almost anything. Jake had been given command not because he was the best pilot or the best tactician, but because he understood what the war had taught humanity. Never again would Earth be vulnerable. Never again would humans be caught unprepared. And never again would they simply accept that superior technology meant inevitable defeat. Admiral Morrison, a young officer, called from the communication station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Tarakan Republic. They're requesting permission to meet with our diplomatic delegation." Jake nodded to Helen. That's your department now. Helen smiled and headed toward the conference room. The Terracans had been the first alien species to contact Earth after the war ended. They were a peaceful alliance of 7 different species who had been living in fear of the Vakari collective for decades. When news spread through the galaxy that Earth had defeated the Vakari, the Terracans had been shocked. Nobody defeated the Vakari. Nobody even survived an invasion attempt. Yet Earth had not only survived but had driven the aliens away in defeat. The Terracan ambassador was a tall, thin creature with blue skin and large eyes that reminded Helen of pictures she had seen of ancient Earth legends. The ambassador bowed respectfully as Helen entered the room. "Ambassador Morrison," the Terracan said in carefully practiced English, "thank you for meeting with us. My people are curious about how Earth accomplished what so many others could not." Helen sat down across from the ambassador. "We got angry," she said simply. The ambassador looked confused. "Angry?" The Vakari made a fundamental mistake. They thought that because their technology was superior, victory was assured. They thought fear would break us. Instead, every attack, every killed civilian, every burned city just made us angrier. And angry humans are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. The ambassador was quiet for a moment, processing this. "My people would like to propose a trade agreement. We have medical technology that could help heal your world. In exchange, we would like access to some of your defensive systems. The Vakari are still a threat, and we believe Earth's weapons could help protect our worlds." "We'll consider it," Helen said. "But understand something. Earth doesn't conquer. We don't invade. We don't force others to submit. But we also don't tolerate threats. If the Vakari attack your worlds, we'll help you defend them. That's who we are now." Down on Earth, Commander Wei Chen was training the next generation of soldiers in tactics that had been learned the hard way during the invasion. His training facility in Beijing was one of dozens around the world, all teaching the same lessons. "Technology is important," Wei Chen told his students, "but it's not everything. The Vakari had better ships, better weapons, better armor, and they still lost." "Do you know why?" A young recruit raised her hand. "Because we fought smarter?" "Because we fought like we had nothing to lose," Wei Chen corrected. "Because every human who picked up a weapon understood what was at stake. We weren't fighting for territory or resources. We were fighting for survival, for our families, for our entire species. That kind of motivation makes you dangerous in ways the enemy can't predict." In the Amazon, Pedro Santos was working with environmental teams to restore the rainforest that had been damaged during the fighting. Trees were slowly growing back, animals were returning, and the scars of war were fading. But Pedro made sure to preserve one area exactly as it had been during the invasion. It was a battlefield where his warriors had made their last stand against a Krell battalion. The aliens had outnumbered them 10-1, but the humans had held long enough for civilian refugees to escape. Every tree still bore marks from energy weapons. The ground still showed craters from explosions. "This is our reminder," Pedro told visiting students from around the world. "This is proof that courage matters, that fighting for something bigger than yourself matters, that even when the odds are impossible, humans don't give up." In Australia, a massive museum had been built to honor Kate Murphy and all the pilots who had sacrificed themselves to save Earth. Her damaged aircraft, recovered from the ocean after the flagship's destruction, was displayed in the center of the museum. Every day, thousands of people visited to pay their respects. Children learned about the pilot who had given everything to protect her world. Veterans who had survived the war came to remember friends who hadn't been so lucky. And everyone who looked at that broken aircraft understood what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. Dr. Susan Miller and Dr. Alan Price continued their research in Colorado, but now they had funding and resources that would have seemed impossible before the invasion. Their work had expanded beyond just military applications. They were using modified alien technology to clean pollution, cure diseases, and explore space in ways that had been dreams just 6 years ago. "We've come so far," Alan said, looking at their latest project. It was a prototype for a faster-than-light engine that combined human and alien physics in completely new ways. "And we'll go further," Susan replied. "The Vakari forced us to evolve. They thought they were conquering us. Instead, they pushed us to become something greater." The Tennessee base where Jake had reunited with Helen had become a permanent settlement. Danny Shaw was the mayor now, overseeing a thriving community built into the Cumberland Mountains. The old mining complex had been expanded into a small city, home to 5,000 people. "We keep getting more refugees," Danny told visiting officials. "Not from the war, but people who want to live somewhere that represents what humanity became during the invasion. Somewhere that remembers the struggle." Back on the Defiance, Jake received a report that made him smile. Earth's new deep space monitoring system had detected a Vakari scouting party near the edge of human-controlled space. The scouts had immediately turned around and fled when they detected Earth ships in the area. "They're scared of us now," Helen observed, reading the same report. "Good," Jake said. "Fear is a healthy response to humanity. It keeps them from making the same mistake twice." A junior officer approached Jake with a data pad. "Sir, we're detecting an unauthorized transmission from the Vakari Collective. It's not a military frequency. It appears to be from their Council of Leaders." Jake took the pad and read the message. It was brief and carefully worded. The Vakari were proposing a non-aggression treaty. They acknowledged that Earth's territory was sovereign and promised never to approach human space again. In exchange, they asked only that humanity not seek revenge. "What do you think?" Jake asked Helen. "I think they're terrified," she replied. "They conquered 17 star systems without breaking a sweat. Then they met us and barely escaped with their fleet intact. Now they're wondering what happens if we decide to come after them. Should we?" Helen was quiet for a moment. "No, we're not conquerors. We're defenders. Let them live with their fear. Let them spend the rest of their existence looking over their shoulder, wondering if the angry humans are coming. That's justice enough." Jake nodded and drafted a response. Earth would accept the treaty, but with conditions. The Vakari would pay reparations to help rebuild. They would share technology that could benefit peaceful development. And they would never, under any circumstances, threaten another species with invasion. The message ended with a simple warning. Earth remembers. Earth doesn't forgive easily. And if you ever threaten us or our allies again, you'll learn why making humanity angry was the worst mistake you ever made. 6 months later, the treaty was signed. The Vakari paid their reparations, billions in resources and technology. They shared knowledge that helped Earth and the Tarakan Republic advance their civilizations by decades. And they retreated behind their borders, nursing their wounded pride and their terror of the species.